Mad Mage here. We are going to talk about the top 10 characters from fantasy and science fiction literature, as according to me. I'm an avid reader. I love books. I love books of any kind, any shape, any form. I've stumbled across a pile of magnificent characters that inspire, anger, and depress me. These are my top 10, not all of them for the best reasons. I've got pictures. We're going to try something new today, so bear with me as I cross over into my presentation here. We're going to go to number 1. We're going to go back to this. We are going to select a tab. And it looks like it's working. All right. So my number 10 is Andrew Wiggin. He is from I think this book is one of 5 or 6 about him from Orson Scott Card. It's set almost present day, maybe a little bit in the future from now, although he wrote it in the 70s, so it'd be quite a bit in the future for him. Ender is a child prodigy and a boy genius. He is Mr. In It to Win It. He does not fight a battle to win that battle. He fights battles to win every single battle. In this world, he is the third born of 3 children, and parents are discouraged from having more than 2. So this creates friction for him with his peers in school, as well as with his older brother, Peter. Because the government is so involved in the genetics of children, the government would have saw Peter, decided they needed to try and have Valentine, saw Valentine, and saw that they needed to try and get the perfect child with Andrew. It's a little convoluted, but reproduction is entirely government control. Eventually, he goes off to battle school after he is recruited by Colonel Graff, who is both a villain and a hero in this book. If you've seen the movie, he's played by Harrison Ford. The movie is not as good as the book, in my opinion, but I did like it, if that counts for anything. I'm not going to spoil it, but he advances through everything. They give him control of a team in the battle school that's cursed. He takes that team that's never won, turns it into a perfect team, beats everybody, even when everything's stacked against him. He manages to win. He thinks of ways to beat the enemy and moves on. From there, he becomes an officer, or he goes to officer training, and he goes through a whole other series of tests to determine if he is fit to lead. And again, no spoilers, but the way that Orson Card builds this character up, you know that he's a child, you know everything about children, but they're so much different than even adults in this setting that it is remarkable how intelligent and capable not only Ender, but any child in this universe. Next is Harry Dresden. Fewer people are familiar with him. He is the main character in the Jim Butcher Dresden Files books. In those books, it is set in today, or near enough today, and he is both a private eye and a wizard. There's magic in this setting, which is really neat. He also brews potions, casts spells, does ruins, and in the TV adaptation, he uses a hockey stick as a magic wand. It's really cool. Also, he has Bob, and Bob is a spirit held in thrall that comes from a skull phylactery. It's kind of creepy, but once you meet Bob, the character, it's actually pretty cool and funny. We're going to move on to number 8. Number 8 is Davey Rice. This is the movie poster. I couldn't find a cover of the book for this one. I don't remember the guy's name, but the character in the movie is Anakin Skywalker, whoever played the older version of him in Star Wars. And what Davey Rice can do is teleport. What really interested me in this character is how he learned it. He was raised, his mom left him when he was a child because his dad was abusive, and his dad beat the piss out of him all the time. And he learned that actually what happened is trauma introduced him to the ability to teleport. He was being beaten by his dad and he just disappeared. And then he ran away from home, goes to a truck stop, gets a ride, he's about to be molested, and he teleports again. And then he develops an ability to control it, and the government chases him. He goes all around the world. He meets a girl. It's as far as love stories go, it's kind of lame. What I like about it is his interaction with his ability. It is very cool, very well written. They did a sequel. I didn't read the sequel or watch the movie sequel. I don't even think I actually watched the movie of this one. I just know that it's Anakin Skywalker playing the main role. But the book is fantastic. So let's move on to number 7 from one of my favorite books. The character might throw you off. My favorite character from this book or series of books is Arthur Dent. He's a total dork. He loves being comfortable. He doesn't like leaving his comfort zone. He meets another fellow called Ford Prefect. He doesn't know as an alien. He thinks he's just a person, but their interactions, he realizes that Ford is not a person. He chases cars while they're driving. He plays in traffic. He has to teach him how to function on Earth. And he eventually finds out that he's an alien, but there's enough chaos at the beginning that it's pretty funny. Through Arthur, we learn about the magic of the towel. Always keep your towel on you. We also learned that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is in fact 42, although the question might be wrong. And the story of this book, or where it was written more accurately, is awesome to me. Douglas Adams formed the idea for this book in a field, I think in Holland, while he was drunk on absinthe and hallucinating. And if you've read the book, you can see that it is absolutely a alcohol-induced hallucination for sure. I mean, look at the cover of this book. It's insane. Let's move on to number 6. Number 6 is another character I absolutely love. His name is Catterly Bonaducci. This is the cover of a quintet. So there's 5 books in this series. And Catterly is a very powerful cleric or a priest. It's in a setting similar to, or actually it is absolutely a Dungeons & Dragons setting. In Faerun, the author is R.A. Salvatore. If you follow Dungeons & Dragons at all, right now R.A. Salvatore is the preeminent name in that world. All the games being played online are in his world or with his characters, or centered around the context he's created. He was the first Forgotten Realms author I read, but he's not the first one. That's Ed Greenwood. But to get into Catterly, he befriends 2 unlikely characters, Ivan and Pickle Boulder Shoulder. They're dwarves. Ivan's a fighter. He's a brute. But Pickle has green hair. And it's not pickle like the food pickle. It's spelled P-I-K-E-L. But I just thought of it for the first time in 20 years that his name is Pickle and he has green hair. That's insane. But he's a druid, so he can talk to trees and animals, and the only person who understands him is his brother Ivan. But moving back to Catterly, Catterly does not use pointed weapons because he's a cleric, so he uses what he calls a spindle disc. And when you read the description, you learn very quickly that it is a heavy yo-yo, and he uses it with aplomb. He can take out just about anyone. He also uses his divine magic and his relationship with his god, I believe is Mystical, but I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read the book. But he takes that divine magic and the inspiration from his god, and he constructs Spirit Soaring, an enormous cathedral dedicated to that god and that spiritualism. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. The top 5. These characters are among my favorite in anything, movies, shows, video games. Some of them are even in video games. But let's go on to number 5. This book, The Hedge Knight, is based on the character Sir Duncan the Tall. He is an enormous character. If you watch the show, they talk about him a little bit, especially when they're discussing Brienne or when Joffrey's making fun of Jaime Lannister for not having anything in the hero book. The name Sir Duncan the Tall comes up, but it does him no justice, because in this book you see that he is an honorable, honest man. He's a bit on the slow side, but he is strong, tough, and talented. He befriends a mystery squire, a little white-haired or a little bald-haired kid who's got a big mouth on him, and this kid just out of nowhere volunteers to become his squire. I'm not going to ruin their relationship or spoil it, but they go on a series of adventures. They go all the way to the Wall in the north, all the way to Dorne in the south. They go to the Reach, they go to the Citadel, they go everywhere together. He is a loyal man, and he will always, always, always have someone's back if they've ever demonstrated to him that they're loyal in return. That's a picture of him on the novel itself, and I could not recommend this novel more. Probably more than even the characters in the 4-3-2-1 position. This novel is the novel to read. George R.R. Martin writes it so well, and it is a moving piece of literature. I absolutely love it. So let's go on to number 4. This one is, of course, Geralt of Rivia. I put up all these books because I've read them all. Actually, I gotta be honest with you, I didn't read any of them. I listened to them all on Audible. And Andrzej is an amazing author. His style of writing is grainy, dark, noir. It's not horror. It's not anything scary for the sake of being scary. It strikes you as medieval Europe, like Czechoslovakia or Poland, where the author is from. And it relies on a lot of Slavic folklore. Not entirely, but there's a lot of it in here. He swears a lot. In fact, you can quote him as saying "fuck" all the time. And Witchers aren't just superheroes. They're mutated with the express purpose of being a Witcher, of fighting demons, monsters, and helping townspeople. I don't know all the Witcher stories, but Geralt's story is he was an orphan. He was found by one of the members of the Witchers, and they mutated him into one. They trained him to fight, taught him magic, taught him potion making, and then set him out on his way. Every horse this man owns is named Roach, so that he does not get attached to it and miss it if it dies, and they die all the time. And one of my favorite parts of both, or actually of all three, the game, the novels, and the TV show, is the relationship between Geralt and the character called Dandelion. And it's only called Dandelion in the game, and in the TV show, I don't remember his name in the books, but it's a bad translation, and to me it's hilarious that this character gets called Dandelion. Geralt punches him in the face, leaves him behind, treats him like garbage, and there's Dandelion singing the song that gets the Witcher known, "Toss a Coin to Your Witcher." You can listen to Leo do a cover on Spotify, and a number of other people have done covers of this song. It is brilliant, and it brings you right into the setting. Now we're going to go on to number 3. This book is one I found much later in life, despite the fact he wrote it a long time ago. But Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Patrick Rothfuss is an avid D&D gamer, or at least he's interested in it. You can watch him at the PAX conventions. He plays with Chris Perkins and some of the guys from Penny Arcade, and he is brilliant. His character is nothing like the one in this book, let's get to him, number 3, Kvothe. That's Kvothe. Tough to say, and it's a mouthful. What I like about him is he's one of the first bards to be featured as a powerful main character in a novel. He comes from a family of musicians and artists, and the other thing is he's a redhead, he's a ginger. There are not enough redhead heroes in books, movies, video games, anything, and he fits the bill. He's intelligent and motivated. He comes from nothing, and he rises to, well, where he ends up in the second book. I'm not going to ruin that because the trilogy's not finished, so the spoilers are really going to wreck these 2 books if I get into it too much. But he did lose his family. I won't get into how. And to me, the first 2 books in this trilogy are like a fantasy Forrest Gump. He is a consultant to monarchs. He travels with plainsmen. He goes here, he goes there, he goes to school, he plays music for money, he joins clubs. Like this guy has done it all, or has tried to do it all, and it is so fun. And Patrick Rothfuss is, I think he has a master's in English, and so not that that means anything, but his command of the English language is phenomenal. It's a beautiful book. I've cried, I laughed, I tossed it across the room a couple of times because I was so angry with it. But it is an entertaining and wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. Now we're down to number 2. Now, before we get to number two is my personal favorite character. Now, keep in mind, this list is for the best fictional characters. Doesn't mean they're all my favorite. These are just the ones that I think were well done, well written, well described, and will stand the test of time. Number 2 is my personal favorite. Pictured here on the Soul Forge is Raceland Mage. He is the penultimate anti-hero. As you can see, he has gold skin, which protects him from various forms of magic. If you look really closely in here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but his eyes or his irises are in the shapes of hourglasses, which give him the ability to view things as time views them, wasting away. Except for a few exceptions, he every time he looks at a person, an animal, a tree, a plant, he watches them die constantly. He gets no break from this. In his hand there is the staff of Magius. It wasn't made by the Mage Magius. I don't know where or why it has the name it has entirely. I think the elves made it, called it something, and then when Magius found it, he just changed it to his own name. But let's get to the real thing with Raceland. What makes him the anti-hero? He's out for himself. He has a twin brother who he relies on physically because he's so sick. But outside of that, he has no loyalty to any of the people he grew up with or any of his friends. But he does have a soft spot for the downtrodden, like gully dwarves, not Kenders. He doesn't seem to like Kenders much. But gully dwarves, he will protect no matter who is going after them. And he feels bad for them. And so you get this paradox in this character of somebody who is selfish and greedy and hungry for power, but also somebody with a tender place in his soul for people who are forgotten and mistreated and literally kicked around. The way that this series or these authors actually get into fictional or fantasy racism is impressive in my opinion, because it doesn't go anywhere it shouldn't. But we're going to move on from Raceland and we're going to talk about my number 1. I don't know that I needed him on this list. He, in the book that I read, he's based on the idea of a character. So the author, Neil Gaiman, let's go to it now that I've ruined it by talking about it. He was able to pull it out of his head. He was able to form this. The character I've chosen for number 1 is the character Wednesday from American Gods. I'm not going to tell you who he is supposed to be, but American Gods is about how colonists or settlers brought their objects of worship with them to the New World, and then because they believed in them, they actually began to exist. Wednesday is one of those. If you are up and up on Norse mythology, you'll know exactly who Wednesday is supposed to be. I'm not going to get into defending the accuracy of the representation or the lore or any of that stuff, because quite honestly, there are smarter people than me who understand the origin of Wednesday, who understand how he would have come to be here and where he would have been spread out, like the way that it was shared in the show. None of that, I'm sure, is accurate, but my personal study has been around Roman and Greek mythology. I'm not as familiar with Norse or with how Wednesday would have made his trip to the New World and how he would have stayed here, how he would have developed power, kept power, and then ultimately lost it. I don't know. I mean, that's the kind of philosophy that is so far beyond me. But what I like about the character is it captures what I imagined Wednesday would have: the mischievous part, the charismatic part, the intelligent part, the scheming part, his ravens, his ability and willingness to communicate with other gods that made a similar trip to North America. And you get a lot of powerful one-liners, both in the book and the show. I won't get into them, but I suggest looking up the Wednesday speech on YouTube, or the Mr. Nancy speech on YouTube, or watch the show, read the book. No, forget that I said watch the show first. Read the book, you will love it, then go watch the show and you'll see where some of it gets mixed up. But at the end of it, I hope that you will take one of these characters or one of these franchises of book and just pick one, go read about them, and just immerse yourself into the character development that exists there. It is wonderful in all of these books that I've talked about. But Mad Mage has a couple other things to do today. I appreciate your time as always. Thank you for spending the last few minutes with me in the Mage's room. I hope to see you next time. I'm sorry that my grasp and my confidence in technology here is a little rough. I hope if I do this again, I'll develop some confidence and it won't be as boring going forward. Love you all. Catch you on the den.